Captain Morrison stared at his navigator with wide eyes. You want to ram an asteroid that weighs billions of tons? Turner nodded enthusiastically. Not exactly ram it, Captain. More like push it. If we hit it at just the right angle with our engines at full power, we can change its direction. Send it flying toward their ships like the biggest bullet in the galaxy. Chief Collins' voice came through the speakers from the engine room. Captain, that plan is completely insane. The impact could tear us apart. And even if we survive, the engines might explode from the stress. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The 10 remaining Zarathi ships were spreading out in a wide circle around them. Soon they would be far enough away that the Defiant could not reach them with its railgun. But they would still be close enough to destroy the human ship with their plasma cannons. How big is that asteroid? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez checked her scanners. About 2 kilometers across and made of solid rock and metal. Mass approximately 5 billion tons. If we could get it moving fast enough, it would hit with the force of a nuclear weapon. Morrison did the math in his head. 1 asteroid moving at high speed versus 10 alien warships. The odds were still terrible, but at least they would go down, fighting. Sam, can you do it without getting us killed? Morrison asked. Turner was already plotting the course on his navigation computer. I think so, Captain. We'll have to hit the asteroid at exactly the right spot and at exactly the right angle. Too high and we'll just bounce off. Too low and we'll be crushed against the surface. Admiral Zektar watched the human ship moving toward one of the larger asteroids. He was puzzled by their behavior. Were they trying to hide behind the rock? It would not help them. His ships could destroy asteroids as easily as they destroyed planets. What are they doing? Commander Veltoth asked. Zektar studied the tactical display. The human ship was accelerating directly toward the asteroid at maximum speed. I believe they are planning to hide behind that rock. A desperate move, but it will not save them. But hiding was the last thing on Morrison's mind. The Defiant raced toward the massive asteroid like a bullet fired from a gun. In the engine room, Collins was pushing the reactors beyond every safety limit. Warning sirens wailed as the ship's systems screamed in protest. 30 seconds to impact, Turner announced. Everyone hold on tight. The crew grabbed their chairs and prepared for the collision. On the main screen, the asteroid grew larger and larger until it filled their entire view. They could see the details of its surface now. Ancient craters from smaller impacts, veins of metal running through the rock. It was like flying into the side of a mountain. 10 seconds, Turner said. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Impact. The Defiant struck the asteroid at the exact spot Turner had calculated. The ship's reinforced hull hit the rock surface and held together somehow. For a moment, it seemed like they were trying to push an immovable object with an unstoppable force. Then physics took over. The asteroid was massive, but it was also floating freely in space. The Defiant's engines, running at 150% of their normal power, slowly began to change the asteroid's direction. The huge rock started to move. It's working, Rodriguez shouted over the noise of straining metal and overheating engines. The asteroid is moving. Turner fired the ship's maneuvering thrusters to push them away from the asteroid's surface. They had done their job. Now the massive rock was flying through space like a cannonball fired from the biggest gun ever built. Admiral Zektar suddenly realized what the humans had done. The asteroid was moving directly toward his fleet at incredible speed. His ships were powerful, but they were not designed to dodge projectiles the size of mountains. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered frantically. All ships get out of the way. But the Zarathi ships were large and slow. They had been built for attacking planets, not for quick movements. The asteroid was moving much faster than something that big should be able to move. 2 of the alien vessels tried to change course, but they were too slow. The asteroid struck the first Zarathi ship dead center. The massive rock smashed through the alien vessel like it was made of paper. The ship's hull cracked and split as 5 billion tons of stone and metal tore it apart. The second ship tried to turn away, but the asteroid clipped its side and sent it spinning helplessly into space. 4 ships down, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. 8 to go. But their victory had come at a cost. The collision with the asteroid had damaged the Defiant badly. Sparks flew from control panels as systems failed throughout the ship. In the engine room, Collins was fighting to keep the reactors from exploding. "Captain, we've lost main power," Collins reported. "I'm running everything on backup systems now. We don't have much time before they fail too." Morrison looked at his crew. They were battered and exhausted, but they were still fighting. Amy Rodriguez was trying to get their weapons back online. Lisa Park was working to restore communications. Sam Turner was nursing the damaged flight controls. They had all given everything they had to give. Admiral Zektar stared at the wreckage of 4 of his ships. Half his fleet was gone. Destroyed. By a single small vessel using weapons that should not have worked. His reputation was in ruins. His career was over. But he still had 8 ships left, and the human vessel was clearly damaged. "All remaining ships, close in and destroy them," he ordered. "They cannot run anymore, their ship is dying." The 8 surviving Zarathi vessels began to move toward the crippled Defiant, their plasma cannons charged for the final attack. Morrison knew they had done all they could. 4 alien ships destroyed and 4 more damaged. It was more than anyone had ever accomplished against the Zarathi Empire. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," Morrison said quietly. But Turner was not ready to give up yet. "Captain, I've still got maneuvering thrusters, and Amy still has 3 rounds left in the main gun." "We're not dead yet." Morrison smiled. These people were incredible. Even facing certain death, they refused to surrender. It was exactly the kind of spirit that had carried humanity from the caves to the stars. "Then let's make our last shots count," Morrison said. The Defiant limped toward the approaching alien fleet. The ship was barely holding together, but its crew was still fighting. On the bridge, damaged displays flickered and sparked. In the corridors, emergency lights cast eerie shadows. But in the hearts of 37 human beings, courage burned, as bright as a star. Admiral Zektar watched the approaching human ship with a mixture of respect and confusion. Any reasonable species would have surrendered by now. Their ship was crippled. Their weapons were nearly exhausted. Their crew must be exhausted. Yet they were still coming forward to fight. "Sir, they're hailing us," his communications officer reported. Morrison's image appeared on the alien command screen. His uniform was torn and there was blood on his face, but his eyes still burned with determination. "Admiral, this is your last chance," Morrison said quietly. "Leave this system, now and never come back. Tell your empire that humanity will not be conquered. We will not kneel. We will not surrender. And if you try to hurt innocent people again, we will be waiting for you." For the first time in 3 centuries, Admiral Zektar felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. These humans had done the impossible. They had proven that the mighty Zarathi Empire could be defeated. If word of this battle spread, other species might start to rebel. The entire empire could collapse. "Withdraw," Zektar ordered quietly. "Sir?" Commander Veltoth could not believe what he was hearing. "I said withdraw," Zektar repeated. All ships jumped to hyperspace immediately. The remaining Zarathi vessels turned away from the battle and disappeared into the darkness between stars. For the first time in 300 years, a Zarathi fleet had retreated from battle. Morrison collapsed into his captain's chair and looked around his ruined bridge. They had done it. 37 humans and a damaged exploration ship had faced the most powerful empire in the galaxy and emerged victorious. Not because they were stronger or smarter or better armed, but because they had refused to give up. In the years that followed, word of the battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would hear how a small human ship had stood against impossible odds and won. The Zarathi Empire would eventually fall, brought down not by superior technology but by the simple truth that bullies could be beaten. And in the history books of a dozen different worlds, they would remember the day that humanity announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The day that courage proved stronger than conquest, and determination defeated despair. The explosion of the Zarathi flagship sent shockwaves through both fleets. Admiral Zektar could not believe what he was seeing. His most powerful warship, the Terror of Worlds, was now nothing but burning debris floating in space. A ship that had destroyed entire civilizations had been killed by a tiny human vessel. Commander Veltoth stared at the tactical display with his mouth hanging open. "Admiral, this is impossible. Our shields have never been penetrated. Our armor has never been breached. How did such a primitive weapon destroy our flagship?" Sektar felt something he had not experienced in 3 centuries of conquest. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of the unknown. These humans were using technology that should not work against Zarathi defenses. Yet somehow, they had found a way to turn simple physics into a deadly weapon. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel," Sektar ordered. "I want it destroyed immediately." But Captain Morrison had no intention of making himself an easy target. The moment their railgun fired, Navigator Turner threw the Defiant into another wild series of maneuvers. The ship spun and twisted through space like a leaf in a hurricane, avoiding the deadly plasma beams that filled the darkness around them. "Sam, you're flying like a madman," Chief Collins called from the engine room. "But keep doing it. The engines are holding together somehow." Turner was pushing both himself and his ship to the absolute limit. Sweat ran down his face as he fought to stay ahead of the alien weapons. Every few seconds, a plasma beam would pass close enough to make the hull glow with heat. But somehow, they stayed alive. Lieutenant Rodriguez was already calculating their next shot. "Captain, I think I understand why our weapon worked. Their shields are designed to absorb energy and deflect it away from the ship. But our railgun fires solid matter, not energy. The shields don't know how to stop something that's just really heavy and moving really fast." Morrison nodded. It made sense. The aliens had built their defenses to stop the kind of weapons they understood: energy beams, missiles, plasma cannons. They had never faced anyone crazy enough to throw chunks of metal at near light speed. "Can we do it again?" Morrison asked. Rodriguez checked her weapons display. "We have 17 more rounds for the main gun. But we need to get close again, and they know what we're trying to do now." Communications Officer Park looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm intercepting their battle communications. They're trying to surround us. 3 ships are moving to block our escape route while the others close in from the sides." Morrison studied the tactical display. The aliens were no longer treating this as a simple execution. They were using real military tactics, trying to trap the Defiant in a killing box where their superior numbers would guarantee victory. "Sam, can you get us to their second ship?" Morrison asked. Turner looked at the display and whistled softly. "It's going to be tight, Captain. They've got us pretty well boxed in, but I think I can use that big asteroid field to mask our approach." The Defiant raced toward a cluster of floating rocks, each one the size of a small moon. Turner flew between them at dangerous speeds, using their mass to block the alien sensors. The Zarathi ships followed, but their massive size made it difficult for them to navigate the tight spaces. Admiral Sektar was getting frustrated. His ships were faster than the human vessel in open space, but among the asteroids, the small ship had every advantage. It could fit through gaps that his dreadnoughts could not even attempt. "Sir, we're losing sensor contact," reported his tactical officer. "The asteroids are interfering with our scanning systems." Sektar pounded his fist on the control panel. "Then get closer. Use visual tracking if necessary. That ship must not escape." But Morrison had no intention of escaping. While the aliens were struggling to follow them through the asteroid field, he was planning his next attack. The second Zarathi ship was moving into position to block their exit from the rocks. It would be the perfect target. "Amy, can you hit their engine section?" Morrison asked. Rodriguez studied the approaching enemy vessel. "If we can get behind them, yes. Their engines don't have the same shield protection as the rest of the ship." Turner saw his chance. While the alien ship was focused on blocking their escape, he took the Defiant on a wide loop around a massive asteroid. They came up behind the enemy vessel just as it realized what was happening. "Fire," Morrison ordered. The railgun spoke again. This time, the metal projectile struck the alien ship's engine compartment. The kinetic energy tore through their power systems and left the massive vessel dead in space. Without engines, it could only drift helplessly while its crew tried to Restore power. 2 down, Rodriguez said with satisfaction. But their success was short-lived. The other Zarathi ships had finally caught up with them. Plasma cannon fire filled the space around the asteroids, turning several of the floating rocks into clouds of superheated gas. The Defiant shuddered as one beam passed too close. Warning lights flashed on the bridge as systems overloaded. Chief, Colin's voice came through the speakers with bad news. Captain, we took some damage to our port shield generator. I can keep it running, but another hit like that will finish us. Morrison looked at his crew. They had managed to disable 2 alien ships, but there were still 10 more out there. The Defiant was taking damage, and they were running out of ammunition. Worst of all, the aliens were learning to adapt to their tactics. Captain, Park called, out. I'm picking up something strange on their communications. They're arguing about something. Morrison was interested. Can you tell what they're saying? Park listened carefully to the alien transmissions. It sounds like some of their captains want to retreat. They're saying this is not what they expected. Others want to continue the attack. This was encouraging news. The Zarathi were used to easy victories. They had never faced an enemy that could actually hurt them. Some of their commanders were starting to doubt their ability to win this fight. But Admiral Zektar was not ready to give up. He had spent his entire career conquering weaker species. He would not be defeated by a single human ship no matter how clever they were. All ships. New formation, he ordered. Surround the human vessel at maximum range. We will fire from a distance where their primitive weapons cannot reach us. Navigator Turner saw the alien ships moving into a wide circle around their position. Captain, they're trying to stay out of range of our main gun. At that distance, we can't hurt them, but they can still hit us with their plasma cannons. Morrison realized they were in serious trouble. The aliens had learned from their mistakes. They were no longer going to let the Defiant get close enough to use its kinetic weapon. Instead, they would stay back and pound the human ship with long-range fire until it was destroyed. We need a new plan, Morrison said. Any ideas? Turner looked at his navigation display and smiled. Actually, Captain, I do have one idea, but you're going to think I'm completely crazy. Morrison looked at his pilot. Sam Turner had already pulled off several impossible maneuvers today. If he said he had a plan, Morrison was willing to listen. Let's hear it, Morrison said. Turner pointed to the tactical display. See that big asteroid there? The one that's about half the size of their ships? What if we could move it? Morrison stared at his navigator. The idea was insane. But then, again, everything they had done today was insane. And somehow it was working. How? Morrison asked. Turner grinned. We ram it. The Defiant moved toward the alien fleet like a small fish swimming toward a pack of sharks. On the bridge, Captain Morrison watched the distance counter tick down. 5,000 kilometers. 4,000. 3,000. Soon, they would be close, enough for the aliens to open fire. Admiral Zektar stood ready in his command center. His massive claws gripped the edges of his control panel. Weapons officer, prepare to fire on my command. Target their engines first. I want to disable them, not destroy them. I wish to study their technology before we kill them. The weapons officer nodded his scaled head. Yes, Admiral. Plasma cannons are charged and ready. At this range, we cannot miss. Lieutenant Rodriguez sat at her weapons station on the Defiant. Her fingers moved across the controls, making final adjustments to their targeting systems. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup on their lead ship. They're preparing to fire. Morrison had been expecting this. The aliens would try to disable his ship first, then capture it for study. That was their standard procedure. But Morrison had no intention of following their script. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers, he announced over the ship's communication system. This is going to get rough. Navigator Turner gripped his controls tightly. He had been studying the alien ships for the past hour, watching how they moved and turned. They were powerful, but they were also slow and clumsy. The Defiant was small and fast. If he could use that advantage, they might survive the first attack. Firing, announced the Zarathi weapons officer. 12 massive plasma cannons fired at once. Streams of superheated energy raced through space toward the small human ship. Each blast contained enough power to vaporize a city. The aliens expected to see the human vessel disappear in a ball of fire. Instead, the Defiant twisted away from the incoming fire like a dancer avoiding a clumsy partner. Turner threw the ship into a spinning dive that should have torn it apart. The crew was pressed hard against their seats as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate. But the plasma beams missed their target by hundreds of meters. "Impossible," hissed Commander Veltoth. "No ship that size should be able to move like that." Admiral Zektar watched the human vessel weave between his weapons fire with growing confusion. His ships had the most advanced targeting computers in the galaxy. They should be able to hit a small vessel at this range without any difficulty. But somehow, the humans were dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable. "Fire again," Zektar ordered. "Concentrate all weapons on that ship." This time, the entire Zarathi fleet opened fire. Dozens of plasma cannons sent streams of deadly energy toward the Defiant. The space around the human ship became a web of destructive force. There was no way anything could survive in that killing field. But Turner was not flying like a normal pilot. He was using every trick he had learned in 20 years of navigating dangerous space. He used the gravity fields of nearby asteroids to change direction without using engines. He fired the ship's thrusters in patterns that made their movement unpredictable. He even used the energy from the alien weapons to push them away from other attacks. "How is this possible?" Zektar demanded. "Their ship should be nothing but debris by now." Chief Collins was working miracles in the engine room. The ship's power systems were being pushed far beyond their design limits. Warning lights flashed, red as safety systems screamed protests. But Collins kept the engines running, feeding power to the thrusters that kept them alive. "Captain, I can give you more speed, but the engines are starting to overheat," Collins reported. "We can't keep this up much longer." Morrison knew they were running out of time. The aliens had more ships and more weapons. Eventually, they would get lucky and land a hit. The Defiant could not win by running away. They had to find a way to fight back. "Amy, can we hurt them?" Morrison asked. Rodriguez had been studying the alien ships while they dodged weapons fire. "Their shields are incredibly strong, Captain. Our main gun is just a railgun that fires metal slugs. Compared to their technology, we're throwing rocks." But Morrison remembered something from his military training. Sometimes the simplest weapons were the most effective. What if we hit them with rocks moving really, really fast? Rodriguez looked at her calculations again. "Captain, if we could get close enough and hit them at the right angle, a kinetic projectile moving at high speed might punch through their shields, but we'd have to be almost on top of them to make it work." Turner heard this conversation and grinned. "Captain, I can get us close, but it's going to be the craziest flying you've ever seen." Morrison made his decision. "Do it. Get us close to their lead ship. Amy, prepare to fire on my command." The Defiant suddenly changed direction and raced straight toward the largest alien vessel. Turner was flying the ship like it was a fighter instead of an exploration vessel. The crew was thrown around in their seats as the little ship twisted and turned through the deadly space between the alien guns. Admiral Zektar watched the human ship approach with disbelief. "They're coming straight at us. Are they planning to ram us?" "No, sir," replied his tactical officer. "They're too small to cause significant damage. They must be planning something else." The Defiant closed the distance rapidly. 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, 500 meters. The alien ship grew larger and larger on their screens until it filled their entire view. Up close, they could see the details of its construction. Massive gun turrets, thick armor plating, energy shields that shimmered like heat waves. "Now, Amy," Morrison said quietly. Rodriguez fired their main gun. The railgun sent a simple metal projectile racing toward the alien ship at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It was just a piece of dense metal, but it was moving so fast that it carried the energy of a small nuclear weapon. The Zarathi shields were designed to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles. They had never been tested against solid matter, moving at relativistic speeds. The metal slug punched through the energy barrier like it was not there at all. The projectile struck the alien ship's hull and kept going. It tore through armor plating and internal structures, destroying everything in its path. Finally, it reached the ship's main power core and detonated it. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. The massive Zarathi dreadnought, which had destroyed countless worlds, broke apart in a ball of superheated plasma. Pieces of debris scattered in all directions as the ship's reactor core went critical. For the first time in 300 years, a Zarathi warship had been destroyed by an enemy. Admiral Zektar stared at his screens in shock. His flagship, the pride of the Third Fleet, was gone, destroyed by a primitive vessel using technology that was centuries behind their own. It should have been impossible. How? He whispered. How did they do that? But Captain Morrison was already planning his next attack. One alien ship was down. 11 more to go. The odds were still impossible, but they had just proven that impossible was just another word for difficult. Good shooting, Amy, Morrison said calmly. Now let's see if we can do it again. Admiral Zektar stood in the command center of his flagship and watched the small alien vessel on his screens. The ship was tiny compared to his massive dreadnoughts. It looked like something built for peaceful exploration, not for war. He had seen thousands of ships like this before, and they all ended the same way. The Zarathi had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries. They had destroyed entire civilizations with ease. Their technology was superior to anything they had ever encountered. Their weapons could turn planets into burning rocks. Their shields had never been broken by any enemy. Commander Veltoth moved his scaled body closer to the display screens. His yellow eyes studied the human ship with cold interest. The vessel appears to be a basic exploration craft, Admiral. Minimal weapon systems, light armor plating, simple energy readings. This will be over quickly. Zektar nodded his massive head. The blue scales on his neck rippled as he breathed. Another primitive species that thinks courage can overcome. Superior technology. They always learn the truth too late. The human ship was moving toward them now. Zektar had expected it to run away or send messages begging for mercy. Instead, it was actually approaching his fleet. This puzzled him. Most species either fled in terror or surrendered immediately when they saw Zarathi warships. Perhaps they planned to ram one of our vessels, suggested Veltoth. Some species choose to die fighting rather than surrender. It makes no difference to us. Zektar had conquered 47 different worlds. He had seen brave warriors and cowardly politicians. He had watched advanced civilizations crumble and primitive tribes try to fight with stone weapons. In the end, they all fell before Zarathi might. These humans would be no different. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morrison looked at his crew. They were all working at their stations with calm efficiency. Fear was there, but so was determination. These people had trained together for years. They trusted each other completely. Amy, what can you tell me about their ships? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez studied her tactical displays. Their hulls are made of some kind of advanced metal alloy. Energy shields are incredibly strong. Main weapons appear to be plasma cannons with massive destructive power. Each ship has about 5,000 crew members. Morrison nodded. The numbers were worse than he had hoped. The alien ships were not just bigger and stronger, they were also carrying small armies of soldiers. If it came to a boarding action, the humans would be overwhelmed in minutes. Pete, how are our engines doing? Morrison called to the engine room. Chief Collins' voice came back through the speakers. I've got them running at 110% capacity, Captain. They're not happy about it, but they'll hold together. I can push them harder if you need it, but we might lose them completely. Morrison had served with Pete for 5 years. The engineer had never let him down. If Pete said the engines would hold, then Morrison believed him. But pushing old engines past their limits was dangerous. One mistake could leave them dead in space. Lisa, are you picking up their communications? Morrison asked. Communications Officer Park nodded. Yes, sir. They're using some kind of encrypted frequency, but I'm starting to understand their language, patterns. Their computer systems seem to be more advanced than ours, but they follow similar logic structures. This was interesting news. If Lisa could break into their communications, they might learn something useful about alien tactics. Every small advantage could make the difference between life and death. Sam, can you get us close to their fleet without being destroyed? Morrison asked. Navigator Turner looked up from his controls with a slight smile. I can get us close, Captain. Whether we survive the experience is another question. Their ships are big and slow. We're small and fast. That might be enough. Morrison walked to the center of his bridge and looked at the display screens. The alien fleet was spread out in a standard attack formation. 12 massive ships with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Against them, one small human vessel with basic weapons and a crew that had never fought a real battle. The odds were impossible. Any reasonable person would try to escape and warn Earth about the danger. But Morrison kept thinking about the colony, planet below. 2 million people had been living peaceful lives when the aliens arrived. Now they were all dead, and their cities were burning. Admiral Zektar received a message from his communications officer. The human vessel is hailing us again, Admiral. Zektar was curious about these strange aliens. Most species begged for mercy at this point. Others tried to negotiate or offer tribute. A few attempted to fight with desperate courage. But these, humans seemed different somehow. Put them on the main screen, Zektar ordered. The image of the human captain appeared before him. The alien looked small and fragile compared to a Zarathi warrior. Its skin was pale and soft, without scales or natural armor. But there was something in its eyes that made Zektar pause. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of cornered predators who would rather die than submit. I am Admiral Zektar of the 3rd Zarathi Fleet, he said in his deep, rumbling voice. You have seen what happens to those who oppose us. Your world will burn just like the others. Your people will die just like the others. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Morrison looked directly at the alien commander. My name is Jake Morrison, and I represent the human race. We don't surrender to bullies, and we don't run from fights. You want to test yourselves against us, then come ahead. But I'm warning you now, we're not like the others. Zektar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Every species believes they are special. Every species thinks they can resist our power. You will learn the same lesson they all learned. The Zarathi are supreme. Morrison smiled, and there was no fear in that expression. Admiral, you've been picking on farmers and artists for 300 years. Today, you meet soldiers. The transmission ended, and Zektar stared at the empty screen. Something about the human's words bothered him, but he could not understand what it was. His ships were stronger. His weapons were better. His shields were impenetrable. What could one small vessel do against such overwhelming power? He was about to find out. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars. The UES Defiant was small compared to the big warships back on Earth. It was built for exploring space, not for fighting wars. Jake had been happy with that. He liked discovering new worlds and meeting new people among the stars. But today was different. Today Jake watched 12 giant alien ships move through space like hungry sharks. Each one was 50 times bigger than his little ship. They had just destroyed a peaceful colony on the planet below. 2 million people had lived there, men, women, and children who had never hurt anyone. Now they were all dead. The aliens called themselves the Zarathi. They looked like big blue lizards that walked on 2 legs. For 300 years they had traveled from star to star, destroying everything in their path. No one had ever been able to stop them. Their ships were too strong, their weapons were too powerful, their shields could stop any attack. Jake turned to look at his crew. There were 37 people on his ship. They had all signed up to explore space and make new discoveries. None of them had expected to face the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. But here they were, and there was nowhere to run. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her weapon station. She was young and smart, and she had never fired a shot in anger. Her hands were steady on the controls, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. The tactical screen in front of her showed the terrible truth. The alien ships had enough firepower to turn planets into dust. Chief Engineer Pete Collins was in the engine room, but his voice came through the speakers. "Captain, I can give you more speed if you need it. The engines might not like it, but they'll hold together for a while." Pete had been fixing ships for 20 years. He knew every bolt and wire on the Defiant. If he said the engines would hold, then Jake believed him. Pete was the kind of man who could make miracles happen with spare parts and determination. Communications Officer Lisa Park looked up from her station. "Captain, the aliens are sending us a message. Do you want to hear it?" Lisa was quiet most of the time, but she spoke 7 languages and could make their old communication system work better than it was supposed to. She had been the first to detect the alien signals when they entered the system. Navigator Sam Turner had his hands on the flight controls. He was the best pilot Jake had ever seen. Sam could make the Defiant dance through space like it was alive. He had already calculated 17 different ways to escape, but they all knew the alien ships were too fast. Jake looked at the planet below. Smoke was still rising from the cities where millions of people had lived their quiet lives. The Altarians had been farmers and artists. They grew beautiful flowers and made music that could make you cry. They had welcomed human visitors with warm smiles and good food. Now they were gone forever. The message from the aliens came through the speakers. The voice was cold and full of hate. "Small creatures in the tiny ship, you have seen what happens to those who stand against the Zarathi Empire. Your technology is weak. Your weapons cannot hurt us. Your shields cannot protect you. Give up now, and we will make your death quick." Jake had heard stories about the Zarathi. They had destroyed the homeworlds of dozens of different species. Some of those people had been more advanced than humans. Some had weapons that could split atoms and ships that could travel faster than light. It had not mattered. The Zarathi had crushed them all. But Jake Morrison was a human being. His species had climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have wiped them out. They had never learned how to give up, even when everything seemed hopeless. "Lisa, open a channel," Jake said quietly. His crew turned to look at him. They all knew what this meant. Once he answered the aliens, there would be no going back. They would either find a way to win or they would die trying. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant," he said, his voice calm and clear. "We're not surrendering to murderers. You killed 2 million innocent people today. That makes this personal." The aliens' laugh sounded like metal being torn apart. "Foolish creatures. We have destroyed civilizations that were old when your world was young. We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that have never been broken. What can one small ship do against the might of our fleet?" Jake looked around his bridge one more time. Amy had her finger on the weapons trigger. Pete was pushing the engines past their safety limits. Lisa was ready to jam the alien communications. Sam was plotting a course that should have been impossible. They were all scared, but they were all ready to fight. These 37 humans had signed up to explore space and make peaceful contact with new species. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. The smart thing would be to run away and warn Earth about the danger. But the people on the planet below had been murdered, and someone had to make the aliens pay for what they had done. "You want to know what one small ship can do?" Jake said, and there was something in his voice that should have warned the aliens. "You're about to find out." The Defiant turned toward the alien fleet and began to accelerate. On Earth, people would have called it suicide. In space, they called it Tuesday. Because humans had never learned the difference between brave and stupid, and that was exactly what made them dangerous.